Hello and welcome to the Political Awakening on the 14th of January, 2026. This is an exclusive on the current situation in Iran entitled Trump Administration Working Secretly to Save the Iranian Regime. Analysts have been perplexed by President Trump's recent statements, which combine threats of military action with encouragement for protesters to continue and seize Iranian institutions. Critics argue that Trump has yet to follow through on any military options and has instead announced 25% tariffs on any country seeking to do business with Iran, further deepening confusion over U.S. intentions. The UK Financial Times confirmed that the 25% order was stated but has not been signed. However, these statements and the promotion of unrest are not accidental. They appear designed to test the resilience of the Iranian regime and, more importantly, the loyalty of Iran's security services, particularly the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The opaque projection of military options, combined with public acknowledgement of their limitations, serves a dual purpose. It allows the demonstrations to absorb pressure while projecting a sense of urgency and threat toward the regime. At the same time, this posture camouflages behind-the-scenes efforts aimed at preserving the existing power structure. As long as Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and his regime remain effectively aligned with American interests, there is little urgency for direct U.S. intervention. Military action would likely become necessary only if the regime fractures internally and protesters overwhelm state institutions, rendering the security services and the IRGC unable to maintain cohesion or loyalty. This approach was underscored when White House Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed that President Trump was leaning toward finding a pathway out for the regime, stating, "What you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately, and I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages." The administration's preference for guiding the regime without resorting to military action, while publicly posturing in support of demonstrators, was further highlighted in reporting by Axios. The White House National Security Team held a meeting Tuesday morning on options for responding to the protests. President Trump did not attend. A senior U.S. official told Axios that the deliberations inside the administration are at a relatively early stage. "We are still not in a decision-making mode regarding a military action at the moment," the official said, while acknowledging it's hard to predict where Trump will land. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in closed-door meetings in recent days that, at this stage, the administration is looking at non-kinetic responses to help the protesters, according to a source with direct knowledge. This strategy mirrors last year's strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. While publicly framed as punitive, those strikes served to protect Iran's spiritual leader Khamenei and provided a pretext to eliminate sections of the military hierarchy that had become liabilities to the regime following its betrayal of Hezbollah and other Iranian proxies, as well as Iran's largely symbolic response to Israel over the genocide in Gaza. As in July of last year, the United States appears to be providing maximum leverage to the Iranian regime while maintaining continuous secret communication. During the current crisis, Axios revealed that, despite public denials, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff have remained in constant contact. According to Axios, Witkoff and Araghchi started exchanging text messages during the nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran last year, U.S. officials said. They continued to communicate even after the U.S. bombed Iran's nuclear facilities in June and were still in touch about potential nuclear negotiations as recently as last October. Araghchi confirmed to Al Jazeera on Monday that he has communicated with Witkoff and that a possible meeting is under discussion. There are proposed ideas that are being examined. In the absence of a unified or credible opposition capable of replacing the regime, the decisive factor remains whether the Iranian military intervenes or stands aside. Only under such circumstances would the United States be likely to step in, positioning itself as the savior of the Iranian nation while using back channels with the IRGC to manage a transition from one American client regime to another. This context helps explain why Trump has officially refused to endorse Reza Pahlavi, son of the former Shah of Iran, or entertain the restoration of the monarchy. Pahlavi lacks broad domestic support, and the 1979 Iranian Revolution was itself a response to the Shah's repressive rule and the abuses of his US-trained security service, SAVAK. Moreover, Pahlavi's British connections, widely understood within Washington, undermine his appeal to the Trump administration. London's efforts to promote him as aligned with US interests appear aimed at diluting American influence in Iran. Britain's promotion of Pahlavi has been increasingly evident and may have extended to leveraging its influence within Iran to elevate his profile. This culminated in reports by Axios that Steve Witkoff met with Pahlavi over the weekend. Axios noted this was the first high-level meeting between the Iranian opposition and the Trump administration since the protests began 15 days ago. This engagement appears less an endorsement and more a response to public pressure, an insurance policy should Pahlavi later be required. Trump has not formally backed him, but the administration is testing his relevance by allowing him limited exposure in U.S. media. Meanwhile, there exist pro-American reformist figures under house arrest, such as Green Movement leader Mir Hossein Mousavi, who retain broader credibility, particularly among middle-aged and younger Iranians. Under the right conditions, these figures could be elevated by Washington as alternatives. For now, however, the regime appears stable, with IRGC support intact. This is a situation Trump is unlikely to disrupt, as military action would likely be symbolic at best and could ultimately strengthen the regime domestically. Britain, by contrast, has escalated tensions, particularly through its media outlets, which have positioned themselves as amplifiers of the protest movement. By highlighting casualty figures and Trump's public statements of support, British media has sought to pressure Washington and raise the stakes for U.S. credibility. This was evident when Trump, confronted by CBS with reported casualty figures, responded that he was receiving conflicting information. Finally, the broader geopolitical context must be acknowledged. Following Venezuela, further U.S. sanctions or regime change efforts in Iran would significantly impact China, particularly its energy security. Destabilizing Iran may therefore be part of a wider American strategy aimed at countering Beijing. Ultimately, it is the underlying political motives that must be examined. In the aftermath of the genocide in Gaza, it should be clear that U.S. policy is not driven by humanitarian concern or opposition to repression, but by the pursuit of strategic interests and geopolitical advantage. Thank you for watching and listening. We look forward to providing you with further insightful analysis. More analysis is available on www.thepoliticalawakening.wordpress.com. Goodbye.